Hello, my restless friends. Welcome to Too Lady to Rest, where we talk about art, culture, and all things vintage gossip. In 1975, filmmaker brothers Albert and David Maysles released the cult classic documentary Grey Gardens, which depicted the lives of two eccentric women living in East Hampton, Long Island. The mother and daughter duo, both named Edith Bouvier Beale and nicknamed respectively Big Edie and Little Edie, were of particular interest to the public due to being the aunt and cousin of former First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, who was one of the biggest celebrities at the time. Despite their prestigious origins and connections, the women had been in self-imposed confinement in the family's mansion for about 20 years at that point, during which time money had dwindled, the home had fallen into disrepair and was overrun by raccoons, and the two women lived in virtual seclusion from the outside world. Living amongst piles of garbage and their dozens of pet cats, the Beals eventually became news due to a 1971 raid conducted by the East Hampton Sanitation Department, which found that the mansion violated basically every single health code imaginable. They then forced the women to clean up and repair the damage in the home, at least to a minimum standard. They began the cleanup process with the help of neighbors and friends, and later with financial support from Jackie O through her billionaire husband, Aristotle Onassis. On top of footing the bill, Onassis himself reportedly sent them care packages and even sometimes called Big Edie for advice, finding her to have a wise and upbeat perspective on life. A year later, in 1972, the Beals were visited by Jackie O's sister, Lee Radziwill, who, along with her boyfriend Peter Beard, intended to make a documentary about her and Jackie's childhood memories of summering in East Hampton. Knowing of the fascinating eccentricity of her aunt and cousin, Lee thought of asking Big Edie to narrate and sing in the documentary. Lee and Peter hired filmmakers Albert and David Maysles as crew and initially shot several hours of footage of the Beals for the project, but it ended up being shelved not long after. Nevertheless, the Maysles brothers saw the potential that the Beals presented and went back a couple of years later to shoot what would then become the 1975 documentary Grey Gardens, which was focused solely on the two women. With a team of editors comprised of three women who were very involved with the making of the film, Ellen Hovde, Muffy Meyer, and Susan Fromke, I hope I didn't butcher those, the Maysles brothers' compassionate and non-judgmental portrayal of these societal outcasts gained a cult following thanks to the Beals' magnetic on-screen personas. Despite living in filth, they cultivated a kind of unshakable, well-bred dignity that couldn't help but inspire respect in people. Despite having a relationship that simmered with bitterness and resentment, erupting in loud arguments between mother and daughter at any given time, the Beals loved and defended each other fiercely, and their aggressive authenticity and joy in the face of societal disdain particularly resonated with the gay community. In 2006, Albert Maysles released some of the leftover footage from Grey Gardens into a new documentary called The Beals of Grey Gardens. Then finally, in 2017, Swedish filmmaker Goran Olsson assembled the previously lost footage originally shot for the ill-fated Lee Radziwill documentary, along with some other footage shot by Peter Beard and Andy Warhol, and produced the documentary That Summer, which is narrated by Peter Beard and Lee Radziwill and sort of portrays their perspective in dealing with the Beals at that time. That Summer is one of my favorite movies, and during a recent rewatch, I noticed a scene that I hadn't really paid attention to before. But before we get into all that, we need to talk about the complex dynamics between the two Beals. Big Edie was the socialite daughter of a wealthy lawyer and stockbroker called John Vernew Bouvier Jr. As a young woman, Edie was described as having a staunch personality and an all-consuming obsession with music and singing, and her privileged upbringing allowed her to cultivate a sort of detachment to everyday concerns like chores and obligations. Edie married one of her father's very wealthy law partners, Phelan Beal, who was 14 years her senior, and and together they had 3 children, Little Edie and her brothers Phelan and Bouvier. Convinced that she could have her cake and eat it too, Big Edie continued to live her bohemian diva lifestyle, even after marriage, which deeply embarrassed her conservative husband and eventually led them to separate. Big Edie then permanently moved into their summer home in East Hampton, supporting herself with the modest stipends that she received from her father's inheritance and a small allowance from her ex-husband. She had been mostly disowned by her father, Major Bouvier, for, and I kid you not, stealing the show at her own son's wedding by arriving late in the middle of the ceremony and, quote, dressed like an opera star. While her ex-husband allowed Edie to keep Grey Gardens, all of the family's other properties remained with him and were later inherited by his second wife, whom Edie never accepted as legitimate because they were Catholic, so technically they didn't accept divorce. In Grey Gardens, Edie says that her father got a quote-unquote Mexican divorce. Big Edie soon couldn't afford to keep the staff that took care of the house, nor could she take care of the house herself, but she refused to sell it. Big Edie was very bad at taking care of herself, and she ended up depending completely on her longtime accompanist and companion, George Gould Strong, to take care of her. Gould, who might have been gay, is referred to in the original documentary as one of Big Edie's male companions, often implied as having been former romantic partners. Although Gould was supposedly fascinated and devoted to Big Edie, and although he did remain by her side for many, many years, even he eventually left her. Not wanting to remain alone, Big Edie decided to persuade her daughter, Little Edie, to abandon her New York dreams of stardom and come back to Grey Gardens to take care of her, especially as Big Edie could no longer afford to help support Little Edie in New York. Little Edie claims that in 1952, her mother spent 3 months pressuring her to come back to Grey Gardens, quote-unquote, from March until July. Little Edie, filled with guilt and concern about leaving her mother alone, relented and agreed to move back to Grey Gardens, where she remained for the next several decades. These conditions produced an intoxicating mix. Both loud personalities, these bright, artistic, and staunch women remain stuck in an unrealistic fantasy of the past in many ways. Not only was this apparent in their once grand oceanfront mansion, now a dilapidated, unsanitary mess, but it's most poignantly displayed when it comes to Little Edie's obvious frustration with her life choices and situation. Prior to this, Little Edie had been living in New York City, looking for her big break as a performer. Taking after her mother, Little Edie's enthusiasm for dancing and performing led her to defy her father's wishes, and she refused to marry any of her alleged millionaire suitors, such as J. Paul Getty, Howard Hughes, and Joe Kennedy Jr. As a child, Edie's artistic tendencies were constantly repressed by her father, who wanted her to become either a partner at his law firm or at least married to one. Reportedly, her father made her wear these clunky orthopedic shoes so she couldn't dance, and he would be verbally abusive to her whenever he saw her wearing lipstick or heels. Throughout all of the footage that was shot of the Beals, Little Edie mentions several times that she was mistreated by her father.
My father educated her out of the Catholic religion, but he was so cruel to me that I had to go to other sources to get what I wanted, and I got it from the Catholic Church. They told me there was nothing wrong with me, and there was nothing wrong with my mother, and there was no reason why I couldn't get what I wanted out of life, and that I wasn't a dirty dog. My whole life I'd been ground down and insulted every single minute.
Little Edie ended up never marrying, and she seems sort of ambivalent about it. Although she does at one point say that, quote, if you can't get a man to propose to you, you might as well be dead, end quote. At the same time, she dismisses as boring all of those alleged millionaire suitors.
But then I don't think American men are a bit romantic. I like foreigners for some reason. I like Russians, Italians, Greeks, Poles. They're romantic. What's romantic about an American stockbroker who you played tennis with at the age of 12 down at the Maidstone Tennis Club? What's romantic about that? I mean, I don't want to hear about his Yale days and everything.
Betraying an unconventional approach to relationships, at one point she even confesses to the Maisels that she fantasizes about being in a threesome with two men.
Did you ever read that story called Wings? After the First World War, this girl's in love with these two aviators. Mm-hmm. And after World War I ends, they just decide to go away together to get over the war. Mm-hmm. So I've forgotten who it was played by, but it's a very famous story made into a movie called Wings. And they start off around the world, this girl with the two aviators, and they have a hell of a time. But ever since then, I had this desire, to find somebody that I liked. I mean, not just one, but two. Now, I'm not talking about the group travel they do nowadays in the space age. My aunt, she's a widow, and she went with 7 other widows. Now, I don't mean that kind of stuff. I mean really to have fun, Not with one, but with two. And I don't mean women either.
That is not how that movie goes, by the way. She's very flirty with the Maisels, who are both married and also have a camera pointing at her, providing a much-needed audience to a natural performer. But the only real relationship of Edie's that we know about was actually with a married man, Julius Krug, back when she was living in New York City. Despite Big Edie's charming and upbeat personality, it becomes obvious at several points in the footage taken of them that she exerts a narcissistic hold on Little Edie, who feels powerless to escape it. Constantly at her mother's beck and call, Edie does not hesitate to express her bitterness and frustration at the direction her life has taken, often rebelling in the only ways she can, such as ignoring her mother's calls, secluding herself in an old armchair left out in the overgrown garden, which she dubs her disappointed chair, and often refusing to let people into the house for no other reason than to have a semblance of control in a life in which she is otherwise completely powerless. This unhappiness is apparent even in her physical appearance. Despite looking great, especially for her age, Edie is plagued with alopecia, likely stress-induced. But she never lets that small detail get in the way of her flair and style, repurposing bath mats and old sweaters as stylish headscarves. This resentment is such a white elephant in their lives that they have constant fights about it on camera, in which Big Edie gets defensive and derides any of Little Edie's claims, often minimizing her complaints and cruelly calling her names.
She can have it.
Oh, no, KO.
Your face is so ugly. Look at that. Woman's supposed to be pretty. Did you ever see such an ugly face? Oh, God. 30 degrees above zero.
There was nothing living in the house. There was no vermin living because we froze so in winter.
How could any vermin? The only vermin was you, Edie.
Despite being put in a weird situation where she is basically her mother's life companion, Little Edie does not seem very secure of her mother's approval, particularly as Big Edie alternates between complimenting and viciously criticizing her daughter in turn.
Turn towards my picture. Isn't that a beautiful mother? Put your arms down. Don't fold your arms like that. They look ugly. Put your hands down. Show your beautiful hands. Dad, go to the bottom of the class. No, that isn't there. No, that isn't it.
People will say we're in a love.
She didn't say love. You're not Czechoslovakian. Love. You don't say love. You say that love. You see, she knows she sings so badly that she has to wiggle about 20 times to every note, you see, to distract the people, that you really can't sing a drop.
I can sing like mad.
Well, sing beautifully. You're singing incorrectly. Very ugly. Always must do everything correctly. Now start at the top now.
Don't throw bouquets at me.
Don't make funny faces. Now that's what I want the next line.
Much too much.
Oh no, you're way off there. No, that's not it. No, he doesn't make up for a lot of words you can't remember. No. Oh, don't do that. Oh, me singing can love. Where in the hell did you come from?
Little Edie often expresses jealousy and resentment when it comes to the men in her mother's life, whom she appears to prioritize over her family. Remember Big Edie's possibly gay accompanist and soulmate, Gold? Edie resents her mother for paying more attention to him than to her own husband or family, essentially blaming Big Edie entirely for the separation from Phil and Beal. Little Edie also speaks very bitterly about a man called Tom Logan, who apparently lived at Grey Gardens for several years as a cook, maintenance man, and general caretaker. It's implied that he and Big Edie were lovers.
Mother and her friends. I never cared for the three people that my mother liked. I couldn't get on with Mr. Beal, and I didn't care for her composer friend. And as for Tom Logan, he drove me crazy in the house.
I love Tom. He played the guitar so beautifully. He sang, he was in rodeo, and he even was in Hollywood. You'd have to admire somebody like that.
She was a pushover.
He had no
And then he
place
asked
to
my
go.
mother, he said, I've just been fired from the Sea Spray. Would you like a maintenance man? Mother took him home.
I didn't want a maintenance
That's the
man. I
story
said,
of
I'll
Tom
take you home
Logan.
for one night.
That's the story of
What I
Tom
said.
Logan.
There wasn't a thing he didn't know how to do. He could fix anything. Lice, plumber thing. He knew how to do everything. He's one of the terribly clever men.
Did he work? He made good salads, but he was drunk all
Oh, no. He came up here every morning, 6 o'clock. Knocked on my door. We talked over the menu for the day, including a half a bottle of rosé vin, or wine, or whatever it's called.
Naturally, couldn't get rid of him, and I had to stay here. What I should have done was leave, and he would have
Well,
left.
all right, you don't believe in religious compulsion. It was a religious thing.
If I'd left, he would have left.
No,
Because
I
think the
deserve.
work would have been too
Well, he didn't
much.
want to
All
go.
alone in the house for Tom.
He didn't.
All I had to do was leave. I'm so stupid that
Well, where would I have been? I'd been all alone in the house.
I think you would have, Mother.
Logan went on to die of pneumonia in the kitchen of Grey Gardens, and Little Edie believed that he haunted the property ever since. Another male companion of Big Edie's that inspired Little Edie's contempt was Jerry Torre, a 17-year-old gardener that befriended the two women out of curiosity. Far from home and fleeing his father's abuse, Jerry took an instant liking to Big Edie, eventually even calling her mother. His relationship with Little Edie was a lot more ambivalent though. In his book about his time with the Beals called The Marble Fawn of Grey Gardens, Jerry gives off the idea that he and Little Edie did not get along very well and rather disliked each other. But he felt the complete opposite about Big Edie. It's very interesting and truly a testament to Big Edie's charm that she was able to inspire such love and admiration from so many people, from her male companions to her friends Lois Wright and Doris Francisco, and even her nieces Lee Radziwill and Jackie O, while being quite frankly horrible to Little Edie. While both women really enjoyed breaking into song and dance at any given moment, Big Edie is often bitingly critical of Little Edie whenever she does something that her mother doesn't like. In one Grey Garden scene, where the Beals have their most heated argument in the mansion's pink room, Little Edie sings a song that her mother dislikes, and Big Edie essentially throws a tantrum, even losing her top and flashing the camera.
Edie, I can't take it, Edie. I'll go right in the other room and I won't have any hot food or anything. Don't do it, Edie! I'll get so mad! Listen, will you stop me? I'm going in the
I'm
other
singing it in
room.
American.
I'll
now.
never see you again. Long as
I'm
I
singing
live.
it in American.
I don't care. You're not going to sing that song. Stop it, will you?
Why not?
Because I don't want to hear it. I'm your mother. Remember me?
I stood for yours all these
Come
years.
on. Well, my voice is beautiful and trained.
Sad.
Edie, stop it. I'm going to get up. Now, goodbye.
With
Going
you.
right in the other room with the cats where I'll be happy. I'm not going to take it. I hope my bathing suit falls off. I hope it does. Something fell off just then. Get out of here. You don't make me mad. Get out. You're making me really angry. Go out. Go away. Stop that.
Yeah, but they're
Well,
gonna
stop
photograph
it. Stop that silly nonsense. Quit it.
I can't have any fun.
Go away. You had enough fun all your life.
I never had a minute's fun, not a minute.
The It's not clear why this became such an ego trip for her, but she appears to behave this way whenever Edie gets more attention or gives any indication of an interest in a life beyond Grey Gardens. Big Edie ridicules her daughter's dreams of stardom and becomes kind of a bully to her whenever outsiders are around, often purposefully comparing little Edie unfavorably to Jerry or others, knowing that little Edie feels jealous about them.
30 degrees above zero.
There was nothing living in the house. There was no vermin living because we froze so in winter.
How could any vermin? The only vermin was you, Edie. Come on,
Is
may
that
I have
nice?
a...
Is that, do you think that was nice?
That make it that you
Is that nice, Mother?
You spice the
Must be
conversation
drunk.
with interest. She can have it.
Oh, no, KO.
Your face is so ugly. Look at that. Woman's supposed to be pretty. Did you ever see such an ugly face? Oh, God. Thank God for Jerry. He smiles. He's beautiful. He stays beautiful. Oh, God.
Little Edie usually appeases her mother in the end, but her resentment comes off in her temper and in the mercurial way that she treats other people. Another bizarre dynamic that Big Edie admits to at least twice is that she makes Little Edie change costumes several times a day for her amusement. Little Edie's vibrant and creative outfits are celebrated amongst fans of the documentary. But we later see that these outfit changes weren't necessarily prompted just by Edie's wishes, but because her mother got bored and told her to change, often into specific outfits.
I don't think that's funny at all. Listen, what, could you put on that black thing I love so much, that from Pearl River? Can you do that for me?
Oh, Mother, that's a nightgown.
Oh, no, it looks,
I'm not gonna wear
looks
that.
like an evening dress. Please put it on.
Oh,
Just
never I
praying
would
about it.
think of it.
Why not?
That's the evening
They wear
dress.
those things. They look like evening
It's
dresses.
transparent. She
They-
sent me a coat.
It doesn't look
and
any
a
more
little
like a
slip
nightgown,
to
but
wear
this looks
underneath.
like a nightgown.
It's very cute.
Don't you want to put it on?
How many times does Edie have to change costumes to make you happy?
Oh,
Yeah.
about 10.
A day?
Yeah.
Yes, you're absolutely right, David. She's very,
keeps
very
the same
particular.
costume on too long, you know. It gets very
she
tired.
likes
Which is your
certain
favorite?
things.
What's your favorite
Well,
one?
I like this black thing. It's a gorgeous thing in black, and it's got
It's a nightgown.
No,
But
it
I could
isn't.
get
No.
something to wear underneath.
No, but wear the black.
I should wear.
Wear those.
Oh, I know what I'd wear underneath.
Wear those
you know.
stockings.
Pantyhose.
Oh, I don't
Wear
get
that
them
underneath.
excited. Put the damn thing on. Now undo the scarf and turn it around the back. Look at what I did. I took that damn old pink thing off and put on the blue costume. You have to change your costume at least every hour, every 2 hours. You get monotonous.
I think it's very cute of Jackie to try to bring us up to date. Now, I'm not going to say anything mean about the efforts.
During their big fight in the pink room, Big Edie and Little Edie discuss a man who supposedly proposed to Little Edie at some point, a 32-year-old count called Eugene Tiskevich, whom Little Edie claims her mother scared off in 15 minutes, implying that because Big Edie didn't want her to leave, she scared off the only man who might have married Little Edie. But once Little Edie leaves the room, Big Edie tells the camera that the reason why she did that is because this man sort of talked shit about Little Edie behind her back. And Big Edie, presumably offended on behalf of her daughter, then told him to leave and never come back.
No, that was not the truth. He said, how could such a warm, lovely person over the telephone turn into anything so cold? That's what he said right down on the floor. So I said, you better go home. Never say goodbye or anything. How could such a warm, lovely woman over the telephone turn into something so cold? I thought that was just a little too much.
What I think is interesting is that she waited for Little Edie to sort of leave the vicinity, almost so Little Edie wouldn't hear the real reason, in an attempt to maybe protect her feelings. Whenever Little Edie mentions her bitterness about staying in Grey Gardens, her mother acts defensively and dismissively.
Well, you go down to the village, you get there 100 waiting for you down there.
Are you kidding? I'm going
You're
to
a
New York.
celebrity now.
I'm going to New York.
Yeah, and I'll bet you $1 billion you never go to New York this fall.
Why?
Well, you never
Certainly.
will. Oh, that's nutty. That's insanity, Edie.
Well, I am.
We'll see. We'll see if you get there.
Every fall I said I was going to go, and I never did.
Oh, they don't care about
Couldn't
that
get away.
nonsense.
Big Edie's first response is to act very disdainfully and then attack little Edie's self-esteem or make her feel insecure or discredited in some way, like we just saw in the scene before. On the one hand, I think that she has some awareness of her own guilt in the situation about keeping little Edie with her all these years. But the truth is that she ultimately cared more about her own comfort than her daughter's happiness. And she isn't ashamed to admit that. She does several times.
And I suppose Mother didn't want me to have anybody that was decent.
I didn't want anybody in the kitchen.
It would have been perfectly all right for me to have married Tom Logan.
Why do you want to marry a kid 32?
Oh, I forgot to say that
Didn't
Eugene
have
was
a
a
nick in
count.
his jeans.
I would have been Countess Edith.
I didn't want my child to be taken away. I'm entirely alone.
On the other hand, one of her weapons is a form of toxic positivity that feels at times charming and at times gaslighty. She confidently claims that her marriage was quote-unquote perfect and keeps telling little Edie that she needs to make herself happy and sort of refusing to shoulder her share of blame in the situation.
Put on the Indian makeup, I look worse than ever.
You haven't got much on, kid.
No powder.
Why? Do you want my flower?
Oh, it's filthy
Right,
dirty in your horrible house.
Yes, it is, Edie.
Feel
It's not bad, kid.
disgusting.
You want it? I got
No.
everything. I got foundation.
I'll never feel right in this place, ever.
You should feel right every morning. Get up and make yourself beautiful. That's what I do. You never can tell who you're going to meet. You might meet your husband, your new husband.
So I need a new husband.
Don't you want some of my powder, babe? It's right in that bag there. You see the bag? I bought that whole bag of makeup, hoping you'd smear it over your
Now I'll begin to sing.
face.
What do I sing?
It is little Edie's choice to stay, but Big Edie knows it's not that simple. Big Edie also often throws in her daughter's face that she can't have any freedom when she's being supported, which is ironic considering that Big Edie never let that stop her in the past when she was being supported by her father and later her ex-husband.
Who is she?
I don't know when I'm going to get
Cat?
out of here.
Well, why do you want to get out? Another place would be
Because I don't like it.
Any place would be much
Yeah.
worse. Any place on earth.
Yeah, but I like freedom.
Well, you can't get it, darling. You're being supported. You can't get any freedom when you're being supported.
You can't.
No, can't.
I think you're not free when you're not being supported.
You have to toe them off.
It's awful both ways, huh?
Well, you don't look it. You look very young for 56 years of age.
Now that we have a better understanding about the dynamic between these two, let's bring another character into the mix. A charming gentleman called John Vernu Bouvier III, Big Edie's older brother and father of Lee Radziwill and Jackie O. Growing up, Big Edie was always very close with her older brother, nicknamed Blackjack due to his deep year-round tan and rakish behavior and personality. They both had strong temperaments and were given to hedonism and bohemian pursuits. And they both proudly displayed what Lee Radziwill calls this Bouvier vanity.
You are taking my picture with no lipstick on? Oh.
Fine.
But Aunt Edie, you look really beautiful. Wait till you see this picture
Looks
of
like
you
$1 million.
in front of your portrait.
I don't know.
Well, look
I
at
like to look myself over before I have my picture taken.
Oh,
Really.
this Bouvier vanity. It just
Oh, yeah,
reminds
I
me of
wish I
my
could look
father.
nice in pictures, baby, really.
Just reminds me of my father exactly. He wouldn't go out unless he thought he was looking absolutely perfect.
Blackjack inspired strong admiration from the women in his life, who were taken with his bold personal style and his shameless pursuit of women, and according to rumor, men. Blackjack was said to have had an affair with composer Cole Porter when they attended Yale together. And even little Edie herself implied something about this. In her personal diary, the Beals' friend Lois Wright, who lived in Grey Gardens for several months around 1976, recorded the following exchange between the Beals. Quote, "Poor Jack. It's his birthday." Big Edie looked sad. "Mother, he was too French, all the aspects. I won't go into all that now, but I'm a Beal. I know my way around. Yes, around the moon." End quote. At this time, the French culture was associated with a more liberal attitude when it came to sex, and thus a higher tolerance for queerness. so this is likely what Little Edie is referring to. Regardless, a Blackjack, who was clearly a sex addict in my opinion, would openly and wantonly pursue women almost every second of every day. He was known to be very promiscuous, and his marriage to Jackie O's mother ended because of it. He was reportedly extremely cavalier about pursuing women right in front of his daughters, whom he adored, especially his mini-me, Jackie. He was so blatant about it that as a young girl in school, Jackie would playfully try to guess which of her classmates' mothers her father had bedded yet. This is when Jackie learned to cope with this kind of behavior, which later came in handy when dealing with her first husband, JFK. But while Big Edie and Blackjack's daughters remained enchanted with his memory, Little Edie seems to have something different to say about her uncle. In this unassuming scene at the end of that summer, Little Edie describes her Uncle Jack as quote-unquote the devil incarnate and tells the producers that he showed her, quote, how perfectly horrible the male species is. End quote. All the while, Big Edie seems very bothered by her daughter's words and urgently attempts to downplay what she's saying, telling the filmmakers, quote, don't believe my daughter, ask me, end quote. Little Edie claims that she was, quote, madly in love with her uncle, end quote, to which Big Edie admonishes her that she, quote, shouldn't have had incest with her uncle, end quote, transferring all the responsibility for the interaction onto Little Edie's shoulders. Little Edie then says that she, quote, found out about men, end quote, through her uncle, to which Big Edie dismissively responds that she, quote, had to find out sometime, end quote.
I'll tell you anything. I'll tell you.
What?
You don't believe my daughter? Ask me.
But I couldn't tell you about that guy.
Oh, Edie, come
I was
on.
mad in love with him. He's my uncle. Through him, I found out how perfectly horrible the male species is.
Oh, Edie, please.
Yeah, I found it all out from my uncle.
But how are you in love with him? You shouldn't have gone.
I was mad in love with him.
You shouldn't have had incest with your uncle.
I didn't say I had incest. I just found out about men.
Well, you had to find out sometime, didn't you? Find the eyebrow pencil lead?
Yeah, every woman was mad.
You find it?
Yeah.
I told you it was there. You going to believe your mother in the future?
Women were madly in love with Jack Bouvier. And he was a mother's boy, and he didn't like any woman except his mother. And he drove his wife crazy. Oh, couldn't stand him. He was a mama's boy.
Oh, the firstborn. Isn't the firstborn old?
This adds a layer of tragedy to Little Edie's personal story. It appears that at some point, her uncle seems to have pursued her sexually. We don't know how old she was at this point, but she was clearly inexperienced when it came to men, by her own words, so she must have been very young. But even if she wasn't a minor, this is still extremely abusive. Blackjack was her uncle, and he clearly had a lot of power over Little Edie, who was, quote, madly in love with him, end quote. She seems to hint that this might have been her first sexual experience, even if she shies away from the word incest, which who wouldn't when it has such a shameful and victim-blamey connotation to it. The way Big Edie dismisses her and simply refuses to even consider re-examining her mental image of her brother is also heartbreaking and very telling of the kind of environment that Little Edie was raised and lived in. It doesn't surprise me that her outspoken nature would lead her to mention this on camera, but it also doesn't surprise me that she would take her mother's invalidation of her in stride. After all, she had decades to learn how to survive this relationship while not letting her own light go out. Despite having been, in her words, ground down and insulted her whole life, Little Edie's joie de vivre survived thanks to her love of music and of swimming in the ocean, one of the only times that she would leave Grey Gardens. I'm certain that the energy of the ocean is part of what kept her inner fire going all those years. Ultimately, Little Edie was correct in estimating that she would only be free once her mother died, which she did in 1977, a couple of years after the release of the original Grey Gardens documentary. Little Edie stayed alone in Grey Gardens for another couple of years before she managed to sell the house and move to New York City. She only agreed to sell the house under the condition that it be restored to its original glory and not changed in any way. This was a difficult demand to accommodate, seeing as the house was in such bad condition that it was barely safe to leave it standing. But the new owners, journalists Ben Bradley and Sally Quinn, managed to do that, even though they claim that the house still smells of cat pee when it rains. It has since been remodeled again and doesn't resemble the original too much anymore, but it does look very nice. After moving to New York City, Edie reportedly would frequent gay clubs and bars, reveling in the love and attention she got there after the movie's success with the gay community. She even went on to perform on stage in her own little cabaret show, where she danced, sang covers of old songs, as well as her own original material, and chatted with her captivated audience. Little Edie later moved to Florida, where she swam in the ocean every day until her death. She was found dead in her apartment in 2002 at the age of 84, and it was believed that she had died of a heart attack or stroke about 5 days earlier. Her body was discovered thanks to her friend Damon Devine, who lived in California and couldn't reach her by phone. He was worried that she hadn't contacted him about the Christmas gift he had sent her, which was later returned to him unopened. While it may sound that she was abandoned, what with it taking 5 days for them to find her and all that, but her niece-in-law claims that she was very loved by her family and could have stayed with them in Oakland, but that she herself preferred Miami and wouldn't give up her independence for anything, preferring to live her life exactly as she wanted to. I'm glad she finally got to. Thank you so much for staying with me this far. And please let me know what you think. Could Edie's traumatic experience with her uncle have contributed to her hesitation to marry? Or was that just a product of her need for independence, as well as an instinctive knowledge that a real man could never hold a candle to her fantasies? Do you think that deep inside she also blamed herself for the abuse like her mother seemed to? It's hard for me to believe that she didn't. And for some reason, I doubt that she spoke about this to anyone ever again. Despite these occasional glimpses, Edie was very secretive of her inner life. A true Scorpio. If you enjoy this kind of content, please remember to like, subscribe, and talk to me in the comments, because that can really help us get found by other vintage gossip enthusiasts out there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!